So can we talk a little bit about transits, like what they are, and so before we get into all of that, but I just want to say that you've been a friend for quite a while for me, and I'm so grateful to you for all you've done and for who you are, and I just wanted to share that with the people that are here.
Well, cool.
Yeah,
I love you too.
I love you so much. And so before we get into just how long have you been doing this, and what made you say, oh, astrology?
Oh, that's an interesting story. Back in the 80s, where were you in the 80s? Anyway, I put myself back in school. I was working on a fine arts degree in photography. And I thought, I'm going to take an astrology class because they deal with myths and all the great artists. You know, they painted Venus and Jupiter and all that. I thought maybe I'll get some content for my photography. So I took an astrology class and it blew me away. I was like, my goodness, this I need to pay attention to this. So that was in 85, I guess. So I've been doing this for 30, 40 years.
Wow, 30, 40 years. That's a long time. And so I would expect that you learn a lot in that time span. Like you learn a lot about not only your craft but yourself and how you relate to other people. What I can't imagine being in something that long and not really knowing it intimately. So I would say that you're a person that knows astrology very intimately and can help others understand it for themselves very intimately. Is that true?
Yeah, the learning for me has to do with, you know, you see something in a chart and you see somebody's life doing it. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then you see something similar later and a different person doing something similar, and I see how they're doing it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, look at that. You know, so it's sort of experiential learning. You know, you see all the little markers, and then you watch how people do their markers.
Wow, that's so interesting. And I'm fascinated by people too. I think that we share something in Taurus or something. I don't remember.
Well, you've got some 8th house stuff, and I've got too much Scorpio.
Oh.
Scorpio is always interested in the other person.
That's true. And I got something in Scorpio. My nose. One of my nodes.
Yes, your North Node is in Scorpio. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Your North Node. You're doing a good job.
I'm doing it. So let's talk about transits. Let's talk about what it is. What's a transit, and how does it affect people?
Oh, okay. So everybody has a natal chart. And what your natal chart is where everything was the hour and the minute you were born in whatever city.
Right.
And that symbol set is a document that's yours forever. So that's your chart.
Right.
You know, and you respond to that chart over your life, and people respond to their chart and their symbol set differently, different times of their life, but it's where you go back to, this is my core symbolic structure. So then, of course, the planets kept moving.
Yeah.
It didn't stop just because you were born.
Right.
And so when a planet comes back and visits your natal chart and gets involved with your natal chart, it affects that part of your chart based on the planet that's there. And so you will have what we call a transit. And so a transit will come along and you will have a psychological experience. And the transits look like this. The moon goes around every 30 days.
Yes.
So it'll go around your chart, you know, every 30 days. And so it hits everything every month, you know. And so when it comes in and hits something like your Mars, you know, and you'll feel aggravated a little bit, but it might be for a half a day because it moves so fast.
Yes, yes.
You know, if you have another transit like Saturn, you know, it takes 30 years to go around.
Yeah.
So when it comes to part of your chart, it'll be there for some months, you know, and you will really have to deal with that for some months.
Yeah.
And then the outer planets like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, oh, they move very, very slow. And so you have one of those get involved with your chart, and you're dealing with like a couple of years of stuff, you know. So, so you can look at what's coming up, you know, what you've done in the past and how you dealt with it, And what's coming up? Oh, got to tear something off here. It's 12 o'clock.
Wow.
So anyway, that's what transits are. They are and things that happen to you that are in addition to your natal chart.
Yeah.
And it's part of your life process.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mhm.
We're having some technical wondering what's going on here. Okay, good. You're still good. Okay, good. Okay, so transits are when things or bodies of planets move around and they
Get involved with your chart.
get involved with your chart. Oh, gotcha.
And let me explain a couple that will be really something you will recognize.
Okay.
So the sun takes a year to go around. And so your sun is in Cancer.
Right.
And so every summer during the Cancer time, the sun in the sky comes back and it hits your sun in your natal chart.
Right.
And so you've got the sun in your chart, which is your light.
Yeah.
And the light in the sky comes and hits your light, and you feel light.
Oh, yeah.
And I call it a solar return.
Oh, okay.
You call it a birthday.
A birthday. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And let me tell you another one. Saturn. Ooh, Saturn is the parent, everyone's parent.
Yeah.
And it takes 28 years to go around. Wow. And when it goes all the way around, just about everybody on the planet in their late 20s, they do something grown up.
Oh.
And they will get a good job, or they will get married, or they'll have a baby, or they'll buy a house, and they'll say, I'm all grown up now.
That makes
That's
a lot
their
of sense.
Saturn return. That's
I
when,
had a baby when I was 28.
see there?
Look at that.
Mm-hmm. So your Saturn return is when you astrologically become an adult.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And let me tell you another one. This is cool. Mars. It's a feisty planet. And it takes a couple of years to go around.
Yeah.
So when you're first born, at about the age 2, you have a Mars return.
Terrible twos.
They're terrible twos.
Well, I call it turbulent twos because they're not
Okay.
terrible, you know.
But you learn how to say no.
Exactly.
And you get to
Exactly.
learn how to express yourself.
That's right.
This is who I am, and I'm going to be me.
That's right.
You know, that's your
right.
Mars return.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's a good, and this is practical ways. Like you can just think about it in that way, and it makes sense, right? Because everybody has this experience. Everybody. That's so interesting. So what else I want to know? Okay, so here's what you told me. I love this quote because you said so. David said this to me the other day, and I said say that again because that you know I get like an intuitive hit on things, and you said this to me. You said, if you respond to any transit appropriately, you'll win.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you mean by that?
Well, astrology is inherently neutral. You know, it doesn't happen to you and give you a bad time, or it doesn't happen to you and give you a good time. It just happens to you. And so when it happens to you, you have a responsibility. And your responsibility is to respond in the most appropriate way. And when you can like sort of back off and say, okay, let's go with this, and figure out a way to process it, and you don't resist, you just jump right into it.
Yeah.
And when you do that, and when you sort of involve yourself, you have a good time.
Okay, so that's interesting. So when I think, one of the things I think about too, and we didn't discuss this earlier, but it's coming up now. So people, a lot of times, some people I know who really believe in this stuff, when we have a Mercury in retrograde, things go a little haywire in terms of communication and technology and things like that. So some people poo-poo it, but you know they're not in the know. So how do we respond appropriately to something like a Mercury going retrograde? Like, what's the appropriate response?
Well, I think that what's going on there is it's sort of giving yourself time to relax. You know, because we're always pushing ahead, and Mercury goes retrograde and says, sort of, calm down. You know, just breathe deep.
Right.
You know, and so you have a good Mercury retrograde experience when you don't like try to push the energy.
Right.
And you just sort of like, okay, let's just sort of take this one step at a time. And I always know this, with Mercury retrograde, if something messes up, all you got to do is do it again.
Yeah.
You know, or do it the second time.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's not like a deal breaker. Mercury retrograde to me is sort of like it's raining outside.
Ooh,
And you just know it's Mercury retrograde, so you take an umbrella.
that's right. That's right.
But it's still raining.
It's still raining, so you have to respond appropriately. That's all. I really like that philosophy. I really like that because people freak out and they go, "Oh, don't buy a car, don't buy a house, don't don't do these different things." But really and truly, it's not about not doing them. It's about doing them with consciousness and doing them with awareness of, if this doesn't work out, maybe I need a plan B. Maybe I do need to take an umbrella. You know, maybe I need to try out a different person or vendor or whatever.
And like if you buy a car, you know, and Mercury retrograde comes up, if you go with the flow, you will just investigate for an extra 3 weeks and think, oh, what about this and what about that? And you know, you won't like impose on yourself, I gotta buy a car.
Yeah.
You just sort of get intuitive and say, so what's going on here? Oh, I'm gonna go check this guy.
Research.
And, you know, research.
Yeah, research. I remember hearing that you know, during Mercury retrograde you can just do some research and find out more information. Just get more information. And that could be outside of yourself. It could be inside. It could go retrospect. I'm always about that. But a lot of people, they don't always go in that route. So that's great advice. Thank you for that. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is okay. So we're gonna talk about 2020 and 2021 in a little bit.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay, so we're gonna get there. But before we get there, I want to talk about Pluto. Me and Dee touched on Pluto earlier. We were talking about Pluto in the chart and what that might mean, and it being one thing after another, and it's precarious. But what's going to happen for us as a country coming up here is a Pluto return. And I read up on it a little bit because I'm curious and I like to do a little research. And here's what I read, and I want to get your take on it. So a Pluto return in Capricorn, which is what's coming up in January, could manifest as the crumbling of the government or an established hierarchy, but also the building of a new one. It can lead to deep and lasting changes in the way that the country is run and governed and the rules that citizens choose to abide by. The energy is like the dark night of the soul of the country. Now, for those of us who know what the dark night of the soul is, we don't welcome it with open arms. That I can say. Dark night of the soul is some deep work. It's some deep, sometimes there's a lot of sadness. Sometimes there's grieving. It's a letting go process. What do you think about that Pluto return thing in terms of our country? Does that sound like it could be a possibility, or what's your take on Pluto return?
So Pluto in general, it's about death and rebirth. Heavy on the rebirth, you know. And what is psychologically behind a Pluto experience? It has to do with the truth. So Pluto will come into a part of your chart or a part of your life, and it says, we need to find out the truth here. And it just rips you open and says, this is what the deal is. And, you know, we're really attached to our stuff. And our stuff is not always, it needs adjusting. And so when Pluto comes and shows you your stuff, and it says, this is not real, this is not true, and it nukes it, and it's gone. Well, we go, oh, I needed that.
I know, we have these attachments.
But it just takes it out of your psyche, and it's gone, and you grieve, and it's like, oh my goodness, where did it go? You know, and so that's the Pluto process that everybody has a lot of respect for. You know, but the trick is it has to do with surrender. You know, just trust it and just say, okay, there it goes. What's next? And you just figure out, and when that anomaly is cleared out of your psyche, and there's really nothing in its place, you know, so you get to build. And you put something new in its place.
Create something that serves you moving forward.
And so that's Pluto in general,
Ooh,
but about our country.
yeah.
Our countries in general. See, in antiquity, kings and countries had charts. We didn't have them,
Ooh.
you know. And so every country would have a chart. And most in Western civilizations, like the Greeks and the Romans, you know, they were like, Pluto takes 250 years to go around. It's a very slow moving fella out there, you know. And so when a culture, and we're getting ready to have our first Pluto return. We're 250 years old.
Wow.
You know? Well, most Western cultures that we are aware of last for 2 Pluto returns.
Really?
They're like 500-year creations,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so we're about halfway through that.
Right.
And, oh boy, I'll get this wrong. There's, in South America, there was the Incas and the Aztecs, is that what they were? There were 2 civilizations there. One of them was ancient. It went forever.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe 1,500 years.
Yeah.
You know, but one of them sort of cropped up, you know, and they were having their first Pluto return. They were like only 250 years old, and the Spanish showed up.
That's right.
And they all got diseased, and it killed them.
Everything changed.
And it wiped out their civilization.
Don't scare people. We're in a pandemic. Don't scare people.
But see, we're taking care of it.
That's right.
You know, everybody's like, oh no, we got to take care of this.
We got to do something.
You know, and so
Yeah.
as a country and as a world,
Mm,
we're facing this, you know, and doing it as best we can.
right.
You know.
Okay. And so with this Pluto return, do you see that? I mean, it's building, you know, for those of us who really know what's going on, it's building, things are changing. People have some ideas about what kind of world we're going to live in, and other people have other ideas.
That's right.
So there's this polarization thing going on too. It's been very interesting to watch what else is happening. So we got the Pluto return thing happening, but then we also, some crazy stuff happened in 2020, right? So 2020 was an incredible year. Most people look at you see the memes. People have, if 2020 were, whatever, it would look like, whatever. So people are really not happy with what happened in 2020. There was a lot of celestial things happening in 2020 that made it show up in a certain way here on the planet. And so I'm choosing to believe that 2021 is going to be getting better. I think a lot of people want to believe that. And I know you don't do predictions, but you're just looking at what's true and you're just relaying that information, that message. I do want to talk about what 2021 is going to look like, celestially speaking. But I want to first talk about what the heck happened in 2021 celestially that made it so crazy.
Well, I have something to look at.
Okay.
Let me find it here.
Okay.
Let's see. There's that one. Saturn, Jupiter. No, not that one. Not that one. I sent you one that was a Mars thing.
Uh-oh.
I sent it last night.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get that?
Is that it?
No. See, I sent 4 and then I sent some more.
Oh.
I only got 4.
Oh, really?
I sent it last night.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot of email craziness.
Okay.
going on.
Well, so we'll look at this one.
Okay.
So there's a chart.
Yeah.
And the inside circle there is the chart of the United States. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
But the outside circle is like where it is 1st of January.
Okay.
And so if you will notice there in the lower left-hand corner, there's a planet with a red circle around it. That's Pluto. And then just to the right of that are 2 planets in blue. One of them is Saturn and the other one is Jupiter. So that's where it is right now.
Okay.
But where it was all during 2020 are those 2 blue planets were in Capricorn. So we had Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. We had 3 planets in Capricorn.
Wow.
And so, Pluto is like been there since 2008, and it is deeply opening up our country to look at itself.
Yes.
So that's been going on for a while,
Yeah.
you know, and it'll go on for a little while, you
Mhm.
know. And so we had these two other planets in there going back and forth across all that, just stirring the pot, you know.
Mhm.
And then there was another planet that made a 90-degree angle of that. That was Mars. And in the spring, Mars squared those planets, and it just really cranked everything up.
Yeah.
Then it went retrograde,
Oh,
and it
wow.
backed over across it in the summer.
Oh my goodness.
And then it stopped and went forward again, and it went back across them again in the fall.
Yes.
So,
We're gonna go back to-
okay, good.
Give us a second. We're gonna go back to our. Okay, I didn't know how to do that. Thank you. Now we know. Okay.
So that has something to do with 2020.
Right.
We had a bunch of planets in Capricorn empowering that Pluto.
Gotcha.
And then we had that one little Mars planet, like stirring everything up
Right.
forever.
Yes.
Spring, summer, and fall.
There was a lot of that polarization thing happening. People really getting agitated with each other in various ways, and it was quite scary for some people. Like, it was really terrifying to be in a situation where we thought we were going to have to fight, flight, or freeze, right? And I think that's
it was pretty spooky.
it was very spooky. And then what happened?
Well, I guess it was like a few days ago. Saturn came out of Capricorn and Jupiter came out of Capricorn, and they got together and made a grand conjunction in the sky, and it was just beautiful.
Yes.
The
let's
whole
talk about
world
that.
saw that.
Let's talk about that, because that's exciting to
Yes.
me. That is super exciting.
Well, you know, Saturn rules Capricorn,
Yes.
and Capricorn is about money and power and control. And to have Pluto and Saturn and Jupiter all in that money, power, and control thing is a heavy-duty thing,
Yes.
you know. Well, Aquarius is a little different. It's a little lighter. It's about artistic things. It's about looking forward to the future. It's about the collective and what we can do for ourselves, you know. And so for Saturn to get out of that Capricorn heaviness and get into this Aquarius, it just lightens the load.
That's awesome.
And so I'm pretty sure that we've got some strange things still going on in 2021, but getting Saturn and Jupiter into the Aquarius thing is going to give a huge shift in our understanding.
It's so a few things about that. First, like I know a lot of my friends who kind of felt a shift. Like, they felt physically different. They felt energetically different whenever Saturn moved into and Jupiter moved into Aquarius. But you know, I'm a little hippified. You know, like back at, you know, there's like the 60s and 70s, this love and peace and all this stuff happened. I'm a little hippified in that I believe in the world getting along, everybody getting along. And there was this song called Age of Aquarius. You remember that?
Yes.
And it was about all of that, about when Saturn and Jupiter, when there's an alignment and it's in the right place at the right time, the sky's going to part, everything's going to open up. I think there is a kind of anticipating of like what that's going to look like. And so I want you to talk to us about that a little bit. And is that, how much of that is fantasy? How much of that is reality?
I think a lot of it's reality.
Is it?
In this context, Saturn and Jupiter get together every 20 years. And so what happened last week, you know, them getting together is not that unusual of an astrological event. You know, 20 years is still a pretty good cycle, but it, you know. And so, but the way the cycle works is it will cycle through like Saturn, Jupiter in Aquarius. It's the first conjunction in an air sign. And before the conjunctions every 20 years were in Earth signs. And so the next, in 20 years, in 2040, we'll have a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in another air sign in Libra. And then 20 years past that, we'll have another Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in the sign of Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will have a series of Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in air for the next 200 years.
Wow.
That's kind of interesting to think
That
about.
is interesting. And so what are the implications of that?
Well, so let's look at what happened last time.
Mm-hmm.
The last time Saturn and Jupiter were in air was, let's see, I got the date here. March the 5th, 1226.
1226.
1226.
Oh my goodness.
And so in 1226, Jupiter and Saturn got together at 3 Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
What happened last week is Saturn and Jupiter got together at 0 Aquarius. So within a few degrees, the very same transit happened in 1226.
Wow.
You know, and so we look at 1226, and what we see is that, you know, it's good for a couple of hundred years. And what happened, you know, like 50 or 75 years later, is the Renaissance started.
Right.
The Renaissance started like in 1300.
Right.
You know,
And we
so-
had this explosion of art and philosophy
That's right.
and all these amazing sciences
Mhm.
that came about,
Mhm.
right? So,
So if we were to look at the past, when Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions go into air, the last time it did, it was really cool.
it was really
You know, I mean, it took like 50 or 75 years to start cooking,
right.
but when it got to cooking, I mean, the whole planet went crazy and brand new things, and the dark ages died,
right.
you know, and
Right.
everything was brand new and the world was exciting.
Wow.
So I think that's going to happen again.
I hope so.
But let me put this into a little context.
Yeah.
Like, we're having a Pluto return in the country,
Yeah.
and a bunch of stuff is like really weird,
Yeah.
you know. Well, that same sort of experience with the Pluto in our chart happened in 1930s.
Mm.
We had not a Pluto conjunction, we had a Pluto opposition. So something very similar. Our country had a Pluto experience in the 30s,
Mhm.
and we had the Great Depression.
Mhm.
You know. And it was just terrible, you know.
Yeah.
And so what happened after that, it didn't happen in the 30s, but the next generation. In the 40s, we got a 40-hour work week. We got Social Security. We got a number of things that we got that we take for granted today
That's right.
came in response to that Pluto opposition and the Great Depression.
Right.
So I'm saying right now here today, you know, we are looking at ourselves, you know, through a microscope, and we had Barack Obama as president, and we had Donald Trump as president. How different.
Very different.
So the collective here got to experience that
Mhm.
broad spectrum of, you know, way to be, you
That's
know. And so now, not next year, but in the next generation,
Mhm.
we will be responding to what we're experiencing in this last 10 years.
That's right.
So it's not going to happen quick, but that we, and if we're smart, we will just make good choices,
Mm.
you know, and we'll evolve ourselves and become a better place.
Here's what I love about what you said so far. You said that Pluto is about telling the truth. And there has never been a time in my experience, as long as I've been alive, when the truth has been so exposed
Mhm.
as what's happening right now. And I feel like it's going to continue. I feel like more and more truth's going to come out about who we are, where we come from, why things are the way they are, and how we can change them.
Mhm.
And so what you're saying is so hopeful to me, because we've been calling this the Great Awakening. Us in the metaphysical realm have been calling this the Great Awakening because it is truth. It is about truth coming out for the first time, and profound truths. And what you're saying about making different choices, I think is going to set up for the society, or the kind of way we want to live
Mhm.
in the future in a much more full way,
Mhm.
in a holistic way. We know a lot now. We know a lot more, and we're going to know more 30, 50, 100 years from
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
But based on what? Because sometimes in societies, way people live is based on lies.
Yeah, it's so easy to believe the lie,
Yeah.
because it's comfortable.
And it's convincing.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, we've believed in authority.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're believing in ourselves,
Mhm.
in our own truth, and who we are. And so the amazing part of all of this to me is by owning our authenticity and owning who we really are, we begin to also translate that to the world we want to live in, right? An authentic,
Mm-hmm.
a true, honest world. That's exciting. That's so exciting for me. Thank you so much
You're
for
so
that.
welcome.
I'm excited
Mhm.
about that. Tell me, what does a session look like with you? Like if somebody wanted to have a session with you,
Oh,
what would
okay.
that look like?
When you get a natal reading, you'll give me your birth information, and I'll run a chart. Probably what I'll do is I'll send it to you just so you can look at it and say, what is this about? But you can look at it and check your information. We want to make sure you got good information.
Yes.
Send it back, and I'll get everything ready. And then we'll just get together for a couple of hours, and we'll talk about it.
Wow.
You
That
know,
sounds amazing. And when you say birth information, it's date of birth,
right,
place of birth, and time.
and time.
Time's the most important one, I know, because and if people don't know their time, it's either on their birth certificate or maybe
Your mother will remember.
mom might know, if she's still around, right? And so mom could tell them. And so can you do online sessions?
Yes, I've been doing telephone sessions. I started doing this 2 or 3 years ago, and it just was so successful. So now my clientele is not just local. I've got people all over the country that I get to talk to, the telephone reading is very personable.
Okay. I do sessions over the phone.
Mhm.
It's great. It's
Mhm.
easy. And so the other thing I know about you is you also do a couple of other things for people: destiny cards
Mhm.
and human design.
Mhm.
I love human design. I really want to have somebody come on and talk a little bit more about it, either you or somebody you know who's really versed in it. It's fascinating to me. Also, so just tell us just a little bit blurb about what destiny cards are.
Okay, let me tell you about human design.
Okay, go ahead.
This guy channeled this whole new metaphysical sort of structure in the 70s. So, and it combined the Kabbalah and astrology and numerology and I Ching.
Uh-huh.
It just combined all of these disciplines and made this brand new thing,
Yes.
brand new device, and it's only 50 years old. It's in its first generation. So I think that's totally interesting, Well, there's this other thing, destiny cards, and they're just playing cards. But playing cards date back several thousand years ago. They sort of showed up on the planet when astrology and numerology and all this stuff were like sort of just coming of age.
Yeah.
And there were a group of guys called Magi's back then, little prophets.
Yes.
They were in charge of the cards, and so this discipline of the cards is ancient. It's as ancient as astrology. And let me tell you this short story. So, the Magi's were in charge of the cards, and then Christ was born, and the 3 wise men showed up. They were Magi's. They were like in the know, and they were following that Saturn-Jupiter conjunction.
That's why they were wise. Right?
That's right.
That makes sense.
So that was cool. Well, then a few hundred years later, religion changed, and they started killing the Magi's. And they got together and like, this is not cool.
Right.
So what they did is they gave the cards to the gypsies in Europe around 1200. And the gypsies took those ancient cards and grew them into the tarot cards.
Tarot. Wow.
So the destiny cards predate the tarot cards.
How interesting. And I know what you're saying is really hits home for me about the playing cards, because my grandmother would do this thing where she would tell my fortune
Mhm.
with playing cards.
Mhm.
And I always ask her, "Where'd you learn how to do
Mhm.
that?" "Oh, I just always know.
Mhm.
I just always know." And she'd never tell me. But it wasn't because I don't think she was very staunch Catholic actually.
Mhm.
And so when she would, pull it, she'd okay, make a wish, and then she'd tell me, what my wish was and whether or not it was going to come true.
Mhm.
And I was just always so fascinated by that, and that was my first experience with any kind of divination tool. It was from my grandmother. And if you know my family, my grandma's a little superstitious, but like to be able to be like this, intuitive, like my family would be like, no, like no, she's not, like you don't know her like I know her. So that's so fascinating. That's so interesting. So how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I had a thing to put on the screen and it didn't get through here.
Oh no.
So they could just call you and say, "How do you find David?"
How do you find David?
But my phone number is 713-256-1603. But who's going to remember that?
You never know.
But if you're looking for me, I can be found.
Yeah, perfect. Yes. We will also on the recording of this one. We'll also put some information on the video so that people can know how to get in touch with you. Thank you so much.
You were so welcome.
I so appreciate you coming here today. And if you guys ever have questions, you can always text questions to the number you see on the screen right there, and then we can address questions. But that's all. We went a little bit over today because we were waiting for our guests, but everything worked out. Everything went great, and I just want to say thank you again.
Well, thanks for having me. I had a wonderful time.
Me too. Thanks so much. And so on behalf of Dee Dee and myself, we want to thank you all for joining us today. Long life and vibrant health to all of you. Namaste.